Good morning, everybody. Wow. We haven't done anything yet, but thank you so much for coming here today. We're really excited to be on stage for the fifth time doing this live? Fourth. So thank you all for coming. This QR code is going to be here multiple times through the session if you want to keep in touch with us. But first, I'm going to hand straight over to Jeff.
I mean, how many come for the forward-looking statement at this point, right? We have to do that. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to use Tableau to analyze the forward-looking statement. 782 words, 5,570 characters. You can see what letter it starts with there. We did a word cloud, of course. Top 20 words, ability, uncertainty, including. Then you get into sentiment analysis, right? The negative words of limited and degradation and risks and litigation. So there's your sentiment analysis of it. We kept going. We were like, how many words are there compared to other things? Tableau keeps it pretty short compared to Walmart, compared to S&P Global, or San Diego Gas and Electric. Wow. Now, if you really want to keep it short, go with JP Morgan Chase. They got it down. They keep it really slick. If you're playing Scrabble, go for jurisdictional or sufficiency. That's the highest Scrabble words in the forward-looking statement. And then if you type about 40 words a minute, it'll take 20 minutes to type this out. So built a little keyboard to type this out, and we're going to go get some coffee. We'll let this run out. Andy, I think we're back to you.
You need to put that viz on Tableau Public, man. Yeah. Right. It's more than just chit-chat. This is chart chat. If this is your first one, you've missed 59 previous chart chats. This is, as I said, our fourth one we're doing live. And before we really get into it, I've just got a quick question to ask. Hands up, and then keep your hands up if you think I had the best costume yesterday. I'm Viz. Oh, thank you. Keep your hand up. Keep your hand up. 1, 2 people. Hands up if you thought Archana had the best costume at I'm Viz. Right, keep your hands up. Okay, brilliant. Put your hands down if you're going to fill out the session feedback survey. Excellent. You're not going to keep them up the whole thing, right? I do this every year, every time I present. It's really important for every presenter here on stage, right through the content pavilion, to know what you think of these sessions. Because without your feedback, we can't make them better. So please fill out the session feedback. Also, I have a personal goal. Right? We get a really high percentage of feedback for this session, one of the highest at conference, and this year my KPI is I want 100% of you, so please let us know what we do. All right, who the heck are we? Well, I'm going to introduce Steve. He is the Chief Chart Looker at datarevelations.com.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce Amanda. If I were to sing all the praises that are appropriate, it would take the entire time of the session. She is one of the founders of the Data Visualization Society, former executive director. She is now an independent consultant, and she is sort of the chief architect behind the framework that makes up the backbone of our new book, Amanda McCulloch.
I'm going to go over to the side of the stage and introduce Jeff Schaefer. Jeff Schaefer is a professor at the University of Cincinnati, and he is the writer behind all of Data Plus Science, where you can find things like his great Tableau tips after he won the Tableau tip battle yesterday.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'll bring it full circle back to Andy. He's a Tableau evangelist at Tableau. He is also 8-time host of the Iron Viz. If you want to see last year's shoes, he's wearing them today.
And it's so nice to see that he's come out of his shell. So.
And we'll tell you a little bit more about this at the end, but we wrote a book, another book, but we'll tell you more about that at the end. And we've got flyers you can take away, as well as loads of stickers with some of the framework in it. But this session is about one chart, 4 different ways. We like to take a chart for this session and build it in a different way. The reason we do this, and the reason we even started Chart Chat, is because having these nerdy, deep debates about the right, wrong, good, bad ways, or different ways to show visualizations has vastly improved all our skills, and we think it really helps people like you among the data fam as well. So you're encouraged to join us on future shows and talk about the chart we're going to look at today. So here is our chart. It comes from Visual Capitalist, and in fact, some of you may have seen Voronoi. Visual Capitalist have started a new app. It's like Instagram for charts. It's really cool. Go check it out. And the chart is showing trust in media. Very briefly, each bar represents a country. The height of the bar is how much people trust media in that country, according to the answers. And at the bottom, we've got percent change, right? Did it go up or down from last year? And this chart actually comes from the 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer, which is it's a pretty cool survey. There's loads of detailed data about trust. So this is what we're going to do. And oh yeah, sorry, Amanda, would you like to say a quick word about critiquing charts?
Of course. So as we think about critique in charts, we want to be really transparent that we're not trying to throw the creators of this chart under the bus somewhere. We really appreciate the opportunity that people give us when they put charts out there in the wild, groups like journalists and other organizations, for us to talk about the different visual design best practices and have a constructive conversation. There are often times when feedback is welcome, there are times it's not. And so we appreciate you all joining in on the conversation today and being mindful of how you give feedback to different people within our broader Tableau community.
Thank you. I'm first. Here we go. So last year, if you were here last year, you saw me, I used Gen AI to get the data out of the chart we did last year. This year, I'm throwing Tableau out. I had the question, could a generative AI tool and an expert data analyst perform better than Tableau with an expert data analyst? There wasn't an expert data analyst available, so I stepped in. Jesus, I'll get my coat. Okay, so I was using Claude, and I was using Claude as a pro, right? I wasn't trying to be a beginner. I was trying to use all my skills to collaborate with Claude. We did do a critique. I'm not going to go through a critique in detail in this session, but I really wanted it to suggest new directions. You know, where could we go with this chart, and could it help me be a better data storyteller? First, I had to get it to extract the data. Analysts need trust, right? And India is number 3. India doesn't exist. It was at the bottom of this data set, which meant every single bar was out by 1 after the third one. So Thailand is actually incorrect there. Here, these up arrows indicate up or down, whether the percentage was going up or down, so positive, negative. The whole data set was positive. In fact, I didn't spot that until Amanda went, all your charts are wrong, Andy. And this is a real problem, right? We have to put trust in data analytics. We build charts for business users, and they put their trust in us. And if it's hard to spot these mistakes, we're going to lose that trust really quickly unless we're very, very diligent. So it's hard. You end up having to do the work twice. I spent an hour trying to get the data out correctly. In the end, I typed it up myself. So we did work, Claude and I worked for about an hour with 5 different charts, and I'm just going to show 2 of them. The first one was grouped comparison, and first shot was like it wrote some broken code. It's not a great start, but it was a really interesting piece of code syntax. Thank you, yes. I like, what is this syntax? And it turned out this is a scripting language called Mermaid. Anybody heard of Mermaid? A few people, right? And so I'd never heard of this. So now I know what Mermaid is. It's a really lightweight, efficient scripting language you can use in the browser. So we fixed the chart, and it was trying to build this, which is just, I don't even know what this is. So we scrapped this. But Mermaid is cool, actually. I'd recommend checking it out. Then we moved on to this grouped comparison, or continued on the group comparison. I was like, well, let's do HTML and JavaScript and SVGs. And it came up with this really interesting encoding. It used the border color to encode change. Now, has anybody ever seen that? No, I've never seen it. Does it work? I don't know if it works. It's a bit odd, right? But if this had been native in Excel 20 years ago, perhaps we'd have just used this as a thing. In the end, I didn't really like this, but I liked that, just an idea generator. So that was a good positive point. But then we got over to change over time, and it went to my favorite chart type. This was Claude's idea, a scatter plot. And I was in a bit of a flow state at this point. We were tweaking, cleaning things up, and this is where I'm ending up. So I gave myself an hour, and this is about where I got to. So with Claude, you can publish these artifacts. So this is live HTML, and we've got interactivity. So what's happening here is we have trust on the x-axis, so this is high trust, and we've got change since last year on the y-axis. So you have quadrants. So this is low trust getting worse, and this is high trust getting better. Right? So I think this is a really good way of showing this data. But look at this. I am not an HTML expert. I'm not a JavaScript expert. I don't really know CSS. But I can go and maintain it. Right? So this was generated really, really quickly. And I think it's pretty good. It is all on screen now. So this is where I got to after an hour. And if I might show the whole video, because I recorded the whole thing. Was I more productive? I kind of think I ended up with about as many charts. So yes, in a way, I did learn new things, so that's good. But there are still fundamental, frustrating challenges I face when I try and use Gen AI instead of Tableau. It's like this is the common problem I have. So I'm going to ask you to test what the next line is. So the tool says, this is the answer. You say, no, you made a mistake. What does it say? You're absolutely right. It's like, right? I mean, I know this is how they work, right? We have to do this back and forth, but that feels so insultingly wrong. It shouldn't make this mistake. And I can't get over that hurdle as somebody trying to use Gen AI. I love the interactivity, I love the ideas, but I still prefer the drag and drop. And really, so my experience for Chart Chat this year was my cycle of AI, which is, I get AI vertigo, which is like this sense of absolute wonder and amazement. Then I get existential dread. I like jobs, energy, critical thinking. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't bloody work. And I find myself mostly here. I just like the sense of control. And I'll just leave you with, I made this graphic by sketching it first on paper, and then ChatGPT made it. I will say this looks really easy on a slide. This kind of stuff looks really good on LinkedIn. It took me over an hour to get it to make that graphic because it made a mistake every bloody time. So there you go. So that's the reality of AI and charts. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to jump back over to Tableau and do this in Tableau. Now, I have to say, I really do like this chart. I like the color of it. I thought was interesting. The bar charts, there's various things. It's a year-over-year comparison. I ended up dropping that at one point. I'll talk about that in a minute. But if you're going to look at time series, I found this version and I thought was really interesting because you could really see a long range of time and how trust is eroding over a long period of time. So if I go back to the original and I said, okay, well, what were the simple changes? We had discussion as a group that I didn't really like the flags and other things. I probably would have done some other things to it, but like Andy, I threw it in ChatGPT and Claude. Now, I thought Claude did a pretty good job, but I encountered the same problems that Andy had. And I did the opposite of Andy. I was doing a one-shot simple prompt as a dummy. I didn't do a great prompt. And this is what I got, a one-shot prompt. This is what Claude produced. ChatGPT went with these bars, and of course the original was the bars. But if you dive into this, data is inaccurate, missing things here and there, or just wrong numbers, especially the year-over-year number. It just didn't get correct. Then I thought about, okay, well, what am I going to do in Tableau? And the funny thing is it brought me full circle back to last year. Last year, if you were here, we looked at the price change over 2 years of food. And I did all kinds of interaction. I did this interactive slope graph to show prices going up. And I did this bar chart race to show in 1 year that, dog food went up to the top of the list. And then I tried to quantify it and put it on a $10 bill and do something fun with it and show the difference of 1 year versus the second year. How much of a $10 bill can you buy? And so, gosh, I could have done the exact same thing for this data set, but that year over year, I really wasn't paying much attention to it. I really was just looking at just the single year of what the media trust was. So I had geography, which was different than the first one. I put it on a map. Can't really see anything with that color. I started playing around with some other color. Doesn't really tell me much, and I quickly abandoned the map. That brought me back to the bar chart, and I was right back where we started, and I thought, gosh, the original, if they would have just rotated the bar chart, would have been a whole lot easier to read those labels, right? I could read the countries, so probably would have just done that. Then I started playing around with other things. The 75% is 75% out of 100. And on this bar chart, I really didn't see that top range. It's, of 100% of the people. So then I started fixing the access at 100%. That got me to start playing with stacked bars and saying, okay, well, there's a 1 minus, right? If you trust the media or you don't trust the media, it's one or the other. That brought me to a point with survey data, a blog post by Steve Wexler about how he looks at Likert data or NPS data, and we sometimes divide it down the middle. And on his survey data of Likert, he diverges it. And so I started playing around with that. Here's countries that have more trust. Here's countries that have less trust. And that started putting me down the path. Now, at the same time, I did look at a Cleveland dot plot. I did turn that Cleveland dot plot into a slider and did all kinds of other things, but that brings me to the viz when I start designing the finals of these. So let me just jump over to the final things that I'm doing here. Here is example 1 where I went dark and I started playing with a slider here. I didn't like the circle and couldn't read the labels, started playing with unit charts. I apologize if you know what that looks like on the screen for you. This is probably Andy's favorite. Andy really liked this when he saw it, but you know, the trust slide, and you're moving the slider back and forth for more or less, and then I ended up here. And I really like this diverging bar chart. Now the rest was just design, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what do I want to do? I probably play a little bit with some things. You'll see I added in, when it's 50-50, there's the coin toss, right? You either trust the media or you don't. I added the labels, more trust, less trust, and then I just started playing around with some fonts. I thought this font, and I was like, okay, I love Railway font, and that looks good, but this is about trust. Trust, got to be a serif font, right? Feet, stable, right? Got to be more trusting. So I ended up with trust. What's more trusting than a ligature, right? A ligature's trusting. So I ended up here. This was my final viz. And just simple diverging bar chart, more trust, less trust. Woo.
Is it still typing?
I probably.
Should do a time check in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. So just take a look at this chart for a second and look at eggs from, you know, oh, if only this were the case, I'd be so pleased. So let me share how I kind of process something like this. And I'll look at this and I'll kind of have this reaction. And by the way, as you learned yesterday, and I did this last year, if you want to win over the crowd, picture of a dog, okay? Picture of a dog works all the time. So let me give you the flood of things that went through my mind when I looked at this thing. And they are, okay, I've seen this kind of data before, not just last year, but all the time, showing now versus then. Is the data any good? Why do we only have 2 years worth of data? Is it important to see more than that? Is it valid to compare this country with that country? Because there were some surprises when we discussed this. Wow, look at the country at the top, let's look at the bottom. And who should I steal from? Who should I borrow from? You know, you collect really good ways of visualizing stuff, and there are a couple of ways of doing this that I thought were really impressive. Well, first of all, trusting the Edelman Trust Barometer. And I spent some time looking at their different reports and was pretty impressed with what they would expose about their methodology. Obviously not going to show the entire methodology, but this brings a smile to my face whenever I see something like this, which is, look, here's how many people we surveyed, here's the margin of error, here's how we went about it. We want to be transparent with this. Versus the Wall Street Journal data, which I was never able to find, where did you get this data from last year? So that pleased me. Okay, can we get more than 2 years worth of data? Yes, we can. And I used AI to scrape the data. It made tons of mistakes, but eventually I was able to get it. But I scraped the wrong data. I scraped the Edelman Index, which is a composite of trust in media, which is much easier to explain. Percentage of people who trust the media versus a composite index of trusting the media, trusting the government, trusting various companies, et cetera. So I got the wrong data. It's pretty similar to trust in media, but I messed up with that. And I messed myself up, and I kind of messed Amanda up. Sorry about that. So here was, you know, the 5 years worth of data, because boy, depending on where you start the point, you could have a story of things going way up or way down. You're kind of cherry picking that start point. So, and who should I steal from? I love this way of showing this. The beginning period, the ending period. So they did a great job here, as I'm hoping there we go. Come on. Doesn't like me. Maybe I need to be closer to it.
Yeah.
Okay, hi Jeff.
Hi.
There we go, I do have to be closer to it. 2006, 2023, and how much it's increased. This is freaking me out. You know, the whole point of it was countries' confidence in national institutions, United States, in 2023. Oh gosh, we can only imagine what that will look like right now. So in any case, this is a good way to show this type of stuff. Also, this brilliant piece of Tableau work from Jacob Rothermund is showing the entire 5 years worth of data, but will allow you to choose any starting point and any ending point and do it as a slope graph, and you can download this thing. He does phenomenal work, so this is going to be one of my go-tos. All right, why I like the arrow chart so much. It plays into what humans do really well. And who determined what humans do well? This is a seminal work from Cleveland and McGill in 1983 that determined position or length of something from a common baseline. Humans just are very good at making accurate comparisons. The two of them at the time worked at Bell Labs. Does anyone know why Bell Labs has been in the news recently? You're seeing a lot of discussions about Bell Labs. Anyone know? Yes, it's the headquarters of Lumen. Okay, that's the former Bell Labs. So if you are Severance aficionados, that is Bell Labs, and I couldn't help thinking about that. In any case, this is the first iteration that I came up with, and I wanted to show first the previous year, the current year, and show 5 years worth of data. I showed this to my colleagues. Jeff said, "Are you finished with that?" And there's a slight, I speak Schaeferese, and I know that's not as good as it could be. And I got some great feedback from my colleagues saying, hey, you should consider doing this, consider doing that, etc. And I did do most of those things and totally forgot one of the suggestions that Jeff said, oh, why don't you do this? And he helped me place it in there. So here's what I came up with for this, which is you can focus on any particular, so this is comparing all 5 years, and you can see, wow, Australia had a really big dip. And you can see, from 5 years ago to this year, there was a big dip. But a really important part of it is choosing what the starting year is. Because if I just compared the previous year with this year, you'd go, oh, there wasn't much of a dip. Here's Argentina, where I am comparing with the previous year. And you can see there was a big increase that's here. And you can also see that over here. So I just love this approach to it, but there are some compromises associated with it, which I'll discuss. One thing is, I'm troubled by comparing one country with another country. It really surprised me that some countries which I associate with quote unquote repressive regimes had higher confidence in their government, had higher confidence in their media. And I would like to have discussed that more with my colleagues, and we may on the chart chat recap of this. So I think seeing the change over time may be a more meaningful thing, in which case I would make the gap, the change, more prominent than I had it. Also, I really like showing all 5 years. I really like being able to see all the countries and make use what we're really great at, which is the position from a common baseline, but I couldn't get the 5 years of data and that positioning at the same time. I compromised. I showed this 1 year versus another year, line everything up, make the comparison, and then I would allow you to focus on one thing versus making a spaghetti chart. So that is what I came up with.
All right. I'll see if I can resolve some of Steve's concerns with how he displayed the data and how I approached the data. So I went back, similar to my colleagues, and looked at the original report, at the Edelman Trust Barometer report. It is a really robust report. You should go read it. It is fascinating, actually. And it is a 2025 report, so it is worth a good read. And one of the things that struck me was that they really had grouped the various different countries into 3 groups, right? You can see on their chart and on the legend that they've used some plain language annotations around distrust, neutral, and trust. And I really started focusing on that story and where could we focus within this set of different data points. I also was curious about where there was actually significant change between 2 points in time, and that's not represented on the chart that was produced by the Visual Capitalist folks. And there were only 4 countries that had what was described as a statistically significant change between 2 points. And I looked at that list of countries. I was just in Indonesia, the end of March, and Nigeria, Colombia, Argentina. And I looked at some of the other countries with a high degree of trust, and I said, I'm really curious what else might help me understand or explain some of these things, or if it's consistent with my worldview of what my perceptions are of these different countries around a free press. So I went ahead and said, let's go ahead and go look at some press freedom index scores, which exist out there in the world. You can look at them by rank and you can look at them by number. And it looks like there's been some significant declines in terms of free press in those various different places. China also rated as very high trust in the media, and it's not a country I associate with having a really free press. And so as I looked at this data, I said, well, can I really use this? Well, the Free Press Index had a major methods change in 2022, right in the middle of our data, or right before it. I am not a big fan of trying to impose correlations and causations and mixing those two things up, and this is not my area of expertise. I'm a public health person, not a political scientist or journalist. And we have 7 minutes each to present today, so I decided to throw this idea out the window and move on and say, well, can we go back to the bar chart, like my colleague said, but could we humanize it a bit more and find a way to kind of start representing that this is people and their trust in the media? So I said, well, we'll build a bar chart, and maybe we can go ahead and start grouping them color-wise. We'll play with color throughout this presentation into those 3 different groupings with this diverging palette. And could we go ahead and maybe put people on the end of it to try to reinforce that we're looking at kind of share of people who have trust in the media? But this doesn't get us to that question about change and what that looks like over time. And it doesn't let us focus on that share piece that Jeff had really focused in on what's the share overall. And so could we focus on really representing a share of people who trust in the media? Well, that sent me back to some work by Kisley Benedict, who had done some great work around looking at if the world was 100 people, and the idea of what they called a plum pudding chart, where you actually represent this circle of 100 people, bringing in an additional point level XY set of coordinates in Tableau, and then saying how many people kind of would be represented here, 48 living on less than $2 a day. And I said, well, what if we took this same approach and used this with our data and did something like out of 100 people, what share expressed trust in the media? 42% in the US in 2025, a number that probably isn't terribly surprising to anyone, I suppose. But this would let us represent kind of our population as 100 people. But this presents me with the Steve challenge of how do I actually have precise visual comparisons? And while plum pudding charts are lovely in isolation, they're very challenging to compare and not very precise to compare. I had this challenge working with a client on a dashboard that this actually did make it into because of the fact that they were very focused on loving how plum pudding charts worked in isolation for one single country, despite the fact that they're not great for that overall very precise comparison. But then I said, well, what if we want to compare trends over a longer arc of time? Because I agree with Steve that 2 points in time don't tell us a lot. And in my mind, elections made a big difference and other changes in the world over, say, the past 5 years. So I went ahead and trusted Steve.
Big mistake, big mistake.
I trusted Steve, and I used his lovely data set on Trust Index that I obviously also didn't read the field label for. And then I went ahead and started working with that data set. And I have appropriately labeled it as we work together. But where my brain went was, how can we represent lots of different countries over time in one single view? And in my mind, that often goes to where we were in COVID, where we often were looking at countries or states and looking at data over time in these small multiple layouts where we're trellising the same chart many different times. So I went ahead and threw that data that we had on the Trust Index overall across NGOs, businesses, media, and government, and put that into a line chart and left the coloring piece on there. And lines let us maybe truncate the axis a bit to narrow in on shape. But in small multiple layouts, I find lines to look kind of like spaghetti worms, like a rainbow spaghetti worm situation. It's very hard to read. There's not a lot of data ink there. And I really wanted to start narrowing in on and focusing on this story around where is the trust lacking? Where is there distrust? And so in order to do that, I started to say, well, let's go ahead and try an area chart, a little bit more data ink. We've got to fix the axis at 0 because we're relying on that filled shape below the line. But the area charts give us a little bit better sense of what's happening in different places. I see that dip in South Korea. I see where data is missing in Sweden, for example. But if I'm going to color in different years, I don't think an area chart is a great way to do that. So let's go back to some bars, because bars give me individual points or marks that I can color based on what the level of trust was for that year, and start to put in a different color palette, add a reference line, and add other ways of reinforcing that story around where there's more distrust. So I said, well, you could throw that diverging palette on, but then we're just coloring everything, right? And when we color everything, we focus on nothing. That's right. We sit there and say, let me go ahead and let you figure out where you care to focus your time and attention, orange or blue. And we'll stay true to Andy's outfit yesterday and his orange and blue color palette for the time being, and leave the orange in there for Steve in Princeton. You're welcome. And so I said, what if you go binary? And you say, well, let's use like the blue and the orange. But we're still coloring everything, which means we're kind of still coloring nothing. So if I want to focus in on a very specific data story, I would pick one of these two colors to highlight. And you can, in Tableau, give people the option to flip between those things. And I've done that in different dashboards where we can't decide if it's a story of success or a story of failure. And in public health, we love stoplight colors. So I try to avoid the red and the green together, and I say you can have the green or you can have the red. You may not have them both together. So if we go ahead and go back to this distrust, neutral, trust legend that I keep indexing on a lot and focus on the distrust categories, we can then narrow in on where that number is under 50% across different points in 5 years and across those different moments. And suddenly, things start to jump out at us more, right? We can see what countries have been consistently in that distrust window, which countries have moved into that distrust window. And then we can start to ask ourselves why. And the great thing is the Edelman Trust Index gives us lots of information about this that I do not have time to go into today, but you should read it. And so the last question I asked myself was, I have this small multiple graph. How do I add a human element back into 28 bar charts? Because I've ended up with bar charts, right? And what I would love to do is to go ahead and start pairing together things like that plum pudding graphic for one country that you could always extract and throw into a presentation or something with the small multiple graph that lets you figure out which country and which year you want to focus on. So if you pick the country and the year, you can filter down that plum pudding chart to just that spot. And then we can make some edits and changes to focus in on things like a key title or takeaway. Where is distrust in institutions prevailing? We can go ahead and we can add some more plain language callouts of how to interpret that plum pudding chart. We can go ahead and add a graphic legend at the bottom in case you're not sure how to read it, adding back in our years so it's really clear what the year ranges are and why we've labeled the highest and lowest values across those different periods. And we can give them a link to the report and say, go check out the data source, go read more about this topic. So that gets me to my final graphic.
Cool. All right. Yeah, cool. Okay. Hopefully that's just giving you some 9:30 in the morning energy. But look, that's the real thing everybody should be doing. You should be doing it with your colleagues, with your friends and your family and your kids. My kids love talking about this stuff. Oh yeah, you've clearly been around the dinner table, right? We will be doing a chart chat episode about this, going deeper dive. So if you want, we want to hear your thoughts. So sign up to our newsletter, and we'll do a deeper dive in this in our next YouTube episode. But now I will hand over to Amanda.
Thanks, Andy. So, as you saw today and as we discussed, every chart is a compromise, right? Every time we pick a chart type, every time we make design decisions, we're making choices about what to show, what not to show, what to include or not. And every dashboard also requires compromise, iteration, and staying focused on audience needs, which is why we wrote a book. Yeah, a book. So as you all know, my wonderful co-authors have a wonderful book called Big Book of Dashboards that if you don't have yet, you should buy. But Dashboards That Deliver is a new book coming in September 2025 that gives you a roadmap to understand your audience's needs, design, iterate, and publish impactful dashboards. The whole first section is all about process. So we give you a process framework. This is our graphic, anonymized and beautified, that you can now wonder what's in all the boxes, to help you make informed design decisions. And to really, at the end of the day, go beyond saying, you should know your audience and your users and build a dashboard for them, and then jumping right into building the dashboard. We instead want to give you the tools that allow you to do great discovery work, understanding your audience's needs, to spend time doing the prototyping and wireframing and design work and getting the feedback from colleagues like we do during Chart Chat and in our professional lives in order to build better dashboards. And so we also have not just a process, but all of the real world examples that you loved from the Big Book of Dashboards, where we dive in not just into design decisions, but the process, timeline, tools, and teams that it took to do that work. One of those examples is the Johns Hopkins coronavirus dashboard. We dove into the whole process behind how they built that and maintained that over the course of March 2020 to March 2023. And I want you all to just think in your head and then come tell me after, how much do you think it cost to build and maintain that dashboard for that period of time? Think about it, mull on it. Some of you already know because I asked you this question at Data Night Out. But as you go ahead and think on it,
We know how to party.
we love those. We love those kind of insights, and we love talking to people from anyone from large banking organization dashboards to our sports racing dashboard to something from NASA. And so we're excited to dive into those pieces. So we hope that you will consider buying the book. We think it's really good. It's really good, right?
Good.
It's really good. I think
so.
it's really good. We hope you'll consider buying the book. We also hope you'll stay in touch with us beyond TC by joining our newsletter. That's how you find out about things related to the book. You get access to downloadables and exclusive content when the book comes out. And you also have access to all of our great updates about when new chart chats are happening. So was this your first chart chat, anyone? Anyone first chart chat?
Oh,
Wow.
first chart. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
You
it
always
was-
remember your first chart.
If it was your if it was your first chart chat, will you come back for chart chat again next month?
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, come on. I know it's 9:40. Like they said, we can also catch up on the various different chart chats through our website on YouTube. You can catch all the past chart chats, which are super fun. So, like Andy said, we have left you with 2 whole minutes, and we don't want you to leave those chairs until you have clicked on that QR code, this one, on this side. How did we do? We want you to click on that QR code.
100%.
100%. 100%. 100%. 100%.
100. Oh, it didn't work.
No one's chanting with us.
Yeah.
I feel like, Andy, we should do something exciting to finish off our chart chat today. Do you think we should start a wave?
Let's start a wave. Yeah, can we? I didn't. Right. Okay,
No,
let's do it.
wait. Hold on a sec. Wave or shoot Jeff out of the cannon.
No, we go. I want to start a wave. We go.
No, Andy needs
come
to
on.
start a wave.
It's nine
Let's do it.
over
Start
here.
on that
This
side.
is like 1996 again. So after 3, wave. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And back again. Oh. Wow, it's just like the Soccer World Cup.
I think you guys,
All right.
you all helped Andy win something right
Yeah,
now, so
that
thank
was-
you.
yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to my wonderful co-authors and co-hosts for Chart Chat for all of the work you do to make this whole thing possible. Thank you all for being here today, and we hope to see you at Chart Chat.
We have a minute to figure out when the next chart chat is.
We
Let's
do.
look at our, no.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Sorry.
and last, most importantly perhaps, is if you haven't already gotten swag, we have swag. Yeah. It can be our book cards, but there's also lots of pins and buttons for Chart Chat and for the book up here. So come grab it, say hi. We're so grateful you're here, and have a wonderful rest of your
Thank
TC.
you.